Hi, I'm Annie. Welcome to my channel. Today I'll be showing you how to make this forget-me-not granny square. This granny square is part of my state flower granny square project, and forget-me-not is the state flower of Alaska. A couple of things about this granny square before we get started. First of all, this is an intermediate level tutorial. So I will be showing you how to make the square step by step, but I will not go into a lot of detail for each individual stitch. So if you're very new to crochet, I would recommend starting with one of my beginner-friendly tutorials before moving on to this one. But if you do know how to make basic crochet stitches, and maybe you've made granny squares in the past, I think you can definitely follow along with this tutorial. Another thing to mention is that this granny square design is my original design. So I do ask you that you give me credit for the design when you use the granny square. You can either link back to this YouTube channel, or you can also mention my account on Instagram. Thank you. First thing you need to make this granny square is yarn. If you want to make your forget-me-not in 3 colors like I've done here, you're gonna need 3 different colors of yarn. I am using a DK weight cotton yarn. I really love making granny squares with this yarn. It works really well. Other things you need are a crochet hook, a yarn needle, and a pair of scissors. We are going to start our forget-me-not square from the middle. So go ahead and pick your first color that you want to use for the center, and we will make 12 half double crochet stitches around a ring to make this center. I am going to start by making a slip knot. And then I chain 4 stitches. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and close this into a ring with the slip stitch here to the first stitch. If you prefer starting your granny squares with a magic ring, feel free to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to chain 2. And now if you remember, I said we are going to need 10 half double crochet stitches for the center, but this chain 2 here is actually going to count as our very first half double crochet. So we're going to need 9 actual half double crochet stitches. So I just go here right in the middle of the circle or the ring. To make those half double crochets. There we go. So I've made 3 half double crochets and I have my initial chain 2. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and work 6 more half double crochets around the ring. So go ahead and work yours and meet me back here. I have worked 10 half double crochets around my ring now, including that initial chain 2 that counts as one of my half double crochets. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close this round. And then I like to chain 1 there, and then I cut my yarn. And I fast enough. We are ready to get started on our next round. And our next round will be the petals of the forget-me-not. And we are going to be making 5 petals for this flower. And each one of these petals is a cluster of double crochet stitches. And for each one of these clusters, we are going to be making 6 kind of partial double crochet stitches. I don't think a partial double crochet stitch is an actual crochet term, but it will make more sense to you once we get started. So essentially, we're kind of leaving those double crochets unfinished, and then we bring them all together at the end to create this cluster in the petal. So go ahead and grab your next color. I'm using this light blue for the forget-me-not. And I'm gonna be attaching my yarn with a slip knot. If you prefer a different way of attaching your yarn, feel free to use that. And then we'll be attaching the yarn on one of these stitches here on the outside of our work. Really doesn't matter which one. I'm attaching it right where I have this yarn end because I am using my weave in as you go method. Which I'm not going to explain in detail in this tutorial, but I will leave you a link to a separate tutorial for that technique if you want to check it out. I'll put the link in the description of this video. Okay, so we attach our yarn. I'm doing mine with a slip knot. You can do yours whichever way you prefer, if you prefer some other way. And I am going to chain 1. And now this chain 1 here is going to count as my very first partial double crochet stitch. And then I'm gonna go ahead and start as if I'm making a double crochet. So yarn over, I go into the same stitch where I attach my yarn and where I have the chain 1. I go into the same stitch. I bring that yarn through. I go yarn over as if I was doing a double crochet, and I pull through 2 of those loops. And now if I was making an actual double crochet, I would go yarn over again and pull through these 2 loops as well. But I want to make a partial double crochet, as I call them. So I just leave it there. I'll show you another one. Yarn over, insert, still in the same stitch here. Bring that yarn through. Yarn over, pull through 2, and stop. Okay? So right now I have that initial chain 1, which counts as my first partial double crochet. I have 2 more partial double crochets, and I have 3 loops on my hook. And I'm going to make 3 more partial double crochets, but now I move on to the next stitch there. Okay, so I have 3 in this one, and I'll make another 3 in the next one. So yarn over, insert in the next stitch, bring that yarn through, yarn over, and pull through 2. Yarn over, insert in the same stitch as the previous one, bring the yarn through, yarn over, and pull through 2. And 1 more. If anybody knows if there is a term for these things that I call partial double crochets, please let me know. You can leave me a comment in the comment section because maybe there is an actual term for that. Okay, so here we are. I have my initial chain 1. I have 2 more partial double crochets in that stitch. And then I have 3 more partial double crochets in the next stitch. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 loops on my hook. And now I'm gonna go ahead and kind of complete all these double crochets at once. So yarn over, and I pull through all of those loops. And that's my double crochet cluster and my first petal. And after that, I'm going to go ahead and chain 6. There we go. And now if we look at our completed square, we have a petal here, which is the petal that we just made, that cluster of the double crochets. And now this chain of 6 stitches, excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather. So this chain of 6 stitches, that is actually hidden here under this next round that we make in different color. So the purpose of this chain 6 is to connect these petals to each other so that we can move from this petal to this petal. So the 6 chain stitches are hidden under here. And now we're just gonna go ahead and make our second petal. So I have my first petal and I have my chain of 6 here. And again, I go as if I'm making a double crochet. I'm going into the next stitch here, okay? I made 3 partial double crochets here. I'm moving on to the next stitch. So I make another partial double crochet. Here we go. And I make 2 more in the same stitch. Here we go. I have 3 partial double crochets in that stitch. And now for this petal, I will make 3 more, but I will make them in the next stitch. Okay, here we go. So I have 1, 2, 3 partial double crochets in the first stitch, and 1, 2, 3 partial double crochets in the next stitch. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 loops on my hook. Now, if you remember, for the previous petal, we had 6 loops on our hook at this point. And that was because when we start with that chain 1, which is always going to have 1 less stitch here at this point. So for all the rest of the petals, we will always have 7 loops on our hook at this point. When we go yarn over and pull through all of those. And we chain 6. Here we go. So far we have 2 petals, and as we can see, they are connected here with that chain of 6. So feel free to work around your forget-me-not, working 5 petals in total. If you need to see how we made the petal, go back and look how we made this one here, because the rest of them are going to be exactly the same way as this one. So work all 5 and meet me back here. I have my 5 petals here, and I have just chained those last 6 stitches. And now I'm gonna bring this around together. And to do that, I will slip stitch here into this space. So not into a stitch, but just into this space here between the first two petals. And then I like to secure it around with a chain 1, and then I can cut my yarn. And fast enough. Here we go. You might want to pull these chains a little bit just to make sure that they are all straightened out. Those chain stitches like to bunch up sometimes a little, so just pull them out a little bit so that you can see that forget-me-not. We are ready to start our next round. As I was telling you before, those chains of 6 stitches that we just created, those are actually going to be hidden in the final square. So we are going to be working this round of stitches next that covers up those chains of 6 stitches. And for that purpose, we'll be creating 8 half double crochets into each one of these loops that we just made. So go ahead and grab your next color, and as before, I will be attaching my yarn with a slip knot. And now you can attach your yarn in the beginning of any of these loops here. I am going to attach it where I have this yarn end because, again, I am using my weave in as you go method. And I'm taking care of these yarn ends as I go. So attach your yarn. Again, this is the way I like to attach it. If you have a different way, feel free to use that one. No right or wrong. Okay. And after my yarn is attached, I will chain 2. And now, if you remember, I told you that we need 8 half double crochets for each one of these loops. And this chain 2 here is actually already counting as my first half double crochet. So I need 8 more for this loop. So I'm creating half double crochets on this loop. So I'm not going into any individual stitch, but instead just inserting my hook into this space here and kind of creating those half double crochets around this loop. So we'll not be able to tell that the loop is there once our granny square is finished. Okay, I lost count how many I have, so let's count them. I'm gonna use my needle so you can also see. So I have here my initial chain 2, and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I actually have 1 too many because that initial chain 2 counts as one of my half double crochets. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, including that initial chain 2. You might need to pull these stitches here a little bit to make sure that they are evenly spread out on that loop. So I have 8 half double crochet stitches in that loop, including the initial chain 2. And now I will just go straight into the next space here and create a half double crochet there. There we go. So work all around your circle, creating 8 half double crochets into each one of these loops. Once you get to the end of the next one, you just go straight into the next one and create 8 half double crochets there. So work all around and meet me back here. I have 8 half double crochets now in each one of these loops here, and now I'm going to close this round with a slip stitch. There we go. And before we move on, always at this point, I like to make sure that I still have 8 half double crochets in that loop, because depending on how you like to close your crochet rounds here, you know, we might accidentally get rid of one of these stitches here. So let's just make sure that I still have 8. So for this purpose, I'm going to be showing you how I count them here on the outside, because we are going to be using this outside part of the stitch for the next round. So if we start from here, I'm going to count this stitch on this side and this stitch here on that side. So this one here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this is here. This here is my stitch number 8 on that side, and then this stitch here is going to belong to that side. So I still do have 8 stitches here. And now if we look how this flower here is positioned on the square, I decided to position it so that we have one petal here kind of in the middle of that side, so that if we look at it like this, it's kind of sitting straight on the middle. So in order to do that, we are going to say that this petal here is the petal that's sitting here in the middle of that side. And in order to get it in the middle of the side, we need to start our square here at a certain point. And to be able to have this petal sitting in the middle, we are going to start in the stitch number 6, counting from here. So again, if we look at here at these stitches, I'm going to show you again because I know that this can be confusing. This stitch here belongs to this side, and this stitch here belongs to that side. So we're gonna start by counting this one as the first stitch from this petal. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that's the stitch number 6, but I am still currently here. So I need 2 slip stitches here to get to this stitch here and be in the stitch number 6, counting from that petal. So I'm just gonna go into this next stitch here and slip stitch. And into the next one and slip stitch. And now I should be in the stitch number 6. Let's count them again. So again, this stitch here belongs to that side, and this is the first stitch on this side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. We're currently in the stitch number 6 right here, and on this side we still have 1 and 2 stitches, and then this stitch belongs to this side, so we still have 8 stitches total in that loop. But we're just gonna start here in this one, and for the next round we are going to be turning this square into a square. Right now it's not a square, it's more like a circle. And we're gonna do that by creating clusters of double crochet stitches on the sides and treble crochets in the corners. So I'm gonna start my first corner here in this stitch number 6, counting from this petal. So for that I will chain 3, and this chain 3 counts as my first treble crochet. And then I will create 2 more treble crochets into the same stitch. So 2 more treble crochets into the same stitch where we just slip stitched and created that chain of 3. Some people like to chain 4 for treble crochets. I noticed that chaining 3 works better for me, but again, whatever works for you, you do you. Okay, so there's my first cluster of 3 treble crochets, and this is the first half of my corner. Next I will chain 2 for the corner, and I will create another cluster of treble crochets in the very next stitch here. So 3 treble crochets into the next stitch. Here we go. There's my first corner. So 2 clusters of treble crochets. And now for the side, in order to make this or turn this into a square, I'll be creating clusters of double crochets. And here I will actually skip the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2, and in the third one I'll create a cluster of double crochet stitches. 3 double crochet stitches. Here we go. And then I will create another cluster of double crochets for this side. So again, I skip 1 and 2 stitches, and I create a cluster in the third one. Here we go. There's my side. And next I will create my next corner. And for the corner, before the corner, I will skip 1 and 2 stitches, and I start the corner in the third stitch. So again, for the corner, I need treble crochets. So skip, skip, and here. So there's half of my corner, 3 treble crochets, and then I will chain 2 for the corner, and I'll create my next cluster of treble crochets in the very next stitch. So here in the middle of the corner, I will not skip anything. Otherwise, I always skip 2 stitches between the clusters. But in the corner, I just chain those 2 stitches and I don't skip anything here. This is the way that I found the number of stitches to work the best for this square, because when we have 5 petals in the flower, this took some math to figure out how we can have those 5 petals on a square that has 4 sides. So this number I found to work the best. Okay, so now we can see here that we have that 1 petal there. It's in the middle of this side here. And we have worked 2 corners and 1 side. So now I will just go around the square, working the rest of these sides and corners exactly the same way. We've done this side and this corner. So if you need to go back, I know it can be confusing where we skipped stitches, double crochets, treble crochets, all that. So feel free to go back here, rewind here, and see how we made this side and this corner, and then work the rest of the sides and corners exactly the same way, and meet me here. Our granny square is starting to look more like a square already. So here we are. I've just finished that round, and now if I have calculated my stitches here correctly, I should have 1 and 2 stitches here between this first corner and this last side, and then I can join this round and start the next round. I am going to start the next round in the corner, so I will just kind of slip stitch my way all the way there to the corner. Here we go. And now if we look at our square, we are creating 1 more round around this square. And this last round, since we already have that square shape, for this last round we are just going to be creating granny stitches all around. So clusters of double crochets into each one of these spaces on the side, and then in the corners we do 2 clusters of double crochets separated by a chain 2 there. So I'm in the corner here. I slip stitch my way here, so I'm just going to create the first corner here. I start by chaining 2, which counts as my first double crochet, and then just 2 more double crochets for this cluster. There we go. And then I will chain 2 for the corner. And I create 3 more double crochets for this corner. So a second cluster of double crochets. And there's my first corner. And then I will just move on to this space here between the clusters on the previous round and create 3 double crochets for this space. If you've made granny squares before, this will feel very, very familiar to you. There we go. So I'm just gonna work all around my square, creating clusters of double crochets into these spaces here on the sides, just like we made this one. And then for the corners, I create 2 clusters of double crochets, separated by the chain 2 for the corner. So feel free to work all around your square and meet me back here. I have just finished my last round here and I'm ready to join this. So just with the slip stitch, I joined the round. And then I can cut my yarn and fasten off. So we have finished our Alaska Forget-Me-Not granny square. The only thing that's left is weaving in these ends. I've been weaving my ends in as I go, so I really only have these 2 that I need to take care of, and block the square. And then we are all done. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really appreciate you. I would love to see your Forget-Me-Not square, so please, if you post pictures on Instagram, tag my account so that I can see it too. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is my original design, so whenever you use the square or publish pictures of it anywhere, you can either link back to this YouTube account or you can mention my account on Instagram. Thank you so much. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.